Well, folks, a lot of news breaking tonight, a historic night. Israel, about 2 hours ago, began striking targets in Iran. This is a long time coming. Iran has been on the verge of a nuclear weapon for a very long time. The Wall Street Journal reported a little bit earlier this week that Iran was already on the verge of developing nuclear weapons, that they had developed multiple bombs worth of nuclear fissile material, up to about 60% highly enriched uranium, principally at its Fordow site. The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, which of course is no ally to, for example, Israel, has stated that Iran has been violating all of its nuclear obligations under all of its agreements with the IAEA, under the original agreement with Barack Obama that Donald Trump pulled out of. That IAEA report was greenlit by all of Europe. The intelligence has suggested for a very long time that Iran was developing nuclear weapons, and Iran itself says that they are developing nuclear capacity such that at any time they could have come to a deal with President Trump. At literally any time, they could have said, we are going to go weapons down with regard to our nuclear regime in order to re-enter the world economy and be treated the same way as Saudi Arabia or UAE or Bahrain or even Qatar. Wouldn't have been difficult. But Iran felt that they had to have a nuclear weapon because, of course, they want to be a regionally dominant player. And the nuclear weapon was designed for one of two purposes, either for the extermination of the state of Israel, their long-stated goal, or to act as a sort of deterrent to anyone taking activities that they did not like, whether that be Saudi Arabia, whether that would be Israel. The goal would be to activate terrorist groups all over the region, fund those terrorist groups. Iran has been developing long-range ballistic missiles at a rapid clip. They tested a ballistic missile just this week that carried a very heavy payload. Their goal was to develop a wide variety of new ballistic missiles that eventually, when they actually had a nuclear device they could attach a nuclear device to, and then possibly use it, or at least threaten to use it. It would have changed the entire geopolitics of the Middle East in a major way. And so tonight, about 2 hours ago, it is now breaking dawn over in Iran. Iran is, at this point, I believe, 8 hours ahead. The time in Tehran right now is currently 5:21 a.m. The dawn is breaking. The Israeli strikes continue. Israel began by striking a number of sites, including in Tehran. They're targeting military assets, military leaders, nuclear scientists, the people responsible for the Iranian nuclear program. And Israel is saying Iran has been threatening nuclear activity for a very, very long time and threatening to exterminate Israel continuously for decades. Iran, of course, has spread its terror tentacles all over the world. They attempted to kill President Trump when he was a candidate. Iran has made very clear over the course of the past week they're not giving up their nuclear program come hell or high water. They kept slapping the United States in the face over and over with regard to the negotiations. We'll get to the United States' role in all of this because, of course, there were expectations that Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, was going to try to push forward some sort of nuclear proposal on Sunday. All of that coming at the tail end of what appeared to be very quickly cooling relations between the United States and Tehran. Was that a ruse? Was that a bluff? Was that part of a broader negotiating strategy? We'll get to that in a moment. First, I just want to bring you what exactly is going on. And throughout the night, we're going to be having on guests from the ground in Israel, including high-ranking government officials. We're going to bring you all the intelligence that we have, all the information we have as we cover what is going down because it's all happening in real time. First off, just so you know the geography, here is a map of Iran. This will be clip 7. This map of Iran shows where their key sites are. You can see their nuclear sites on this map. You can see where they are building weaponization facilities on this map. Tehran, Fordow, Natanz, those were the main targets of the Israelis on night one. Here's some video of the Tehran skyline as the bombings were occurring. So Israel did attack, again, within Tehran because there are in many of these Islamic Republic capitals, this is true in Lebanon as well, areas that are basically occupied by senior government officials. Israel has excellent intelligence viewership into Tehran. There are reports that Mossad agents on the ground in Iran were also participating in operations simultaneously. You can see that's kinetic activity in Tehran. There are also photos of buildings that were struck by Israel in Tehran. The bombing continues in Tehran, by the way. The buildings struck, some of them completely collapsed. CNN is reporting already that there is a very high chance that senior Iranian military brass have been eliminated. Here was CNN reporting just a few moments ago. This is clip 12.
Something I just heard from a senior Israeli official who says that according to Israeli assessments, there are very high chances that the entire Iranian general staff, including the head of the Iranian general staff of the Iranian military, and several senior Iranian nuclear scientists were all eliminated in the Israeli strikes tonight.
There are reports emerging from Israel that the entire top brass of the IRGC may have been eliminated, or many of their top people, including the military chief of staff, the commander of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Again, all of these groups, the IRGC particularly, works hand in glove with the terrorists, including terrorists in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, terrorists all over the region. The secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and nuclear scientists were all apparently targeted. Coming up in just a few moments, we will be joined by the former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, to discuss this. He's been pushing for Israel to strike what he called the head of the octopus for a very long time. Prime Minister Netanyahu did put out a full statement in Hebrew, and then he put out one in English explaining exactly what happened tonight. Here was the current Prime Minister of Israel.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago...
Okay, pause it right there. Okay, the point that Netanyahu is making right there, and this is the correct point, is that the breakout time for an Iranian bomb could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. But the bottom line is that an Iranian bomb is an existential threat to the state of Israel. Iran has very often suggested that Israel is what they call a one-bomb state, meaning one bomb could take out nearly the entire majority of the population of Israel. And Israel has a closing window because recall that in the prior exchanges with Iran, in which Iran fired missiles at Israel, and then Israel went back at Iran and destroyed all of their air defenses. Once that window closes, it becomes much more difficult for Israel to perform the kind of operation that it is currently performing. In the last round of fighting, Israel, with airstrikes, took out a bunch of Arrow 3 systems, took out a bunch of missile defense systems and air defense systems that Iran had in place that had been supplied by Russia. And Israel destroyed them. And so the skies over Tehran were clear. And so that window was closing. And meanwhile, Iran was racing to build more ballistic missiles, racing toward a nuclear weapon. And so Israel wouldn't have a perfect perspective into when the window would close. They just know the window was closing. Here's Netanyahu.
Victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000s of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. Iran is now working on what it calls the new plan to destroy Israel. You see, the old plan failed. Iran and its proxies try to encircle Israel with a ring of fire and to attack us with the horrible attack of October 7th. But the people of Israel, the soldiers of Israel, rose like lions to defend our country. We crushed Hamas.
Well, that was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just a few moments ago in Israel explaining the current geopolitical situation of Israel that led to the attacks on Iran tonight in Tehran, in Natanz, and Fordow, attacking missile factories. You can see secondary explosions in the videos. Attacking nuclear facilities, attacking nuclear scientists, attacking top members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Joining us on the line right now is Naftali Bennett. He's the former Prime Minister of Israel. Prime Minister, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
We are all watching as this unfolds. So tell me, first of all, what is the feeling like in Israel from on the ground, given what's going on tonight?
Well, there were sirens across Israel, and so all Israelis are alert. It's the middle of the night, and this is long due. Iran has explicitly time and again said they want to destroy Israel. Has sped forward with enriched uranium. They today have enough enriched uranium for 10 bombs at an immediate time frame. We know that they tried to assassinate President Trump. We know they're the epicenter of all the terror in the Middle East. So it's long due. This is the right thing to do. And all Israelis are united behind this.
So the extent of the operation, so far as we know, targets everyone from top leaders in the IRGC to the nuclear facilities in Natanz and Fordow, possibly other targets as well. Does this appear to be an attempt by the Israelis to decapitate the regime? Is this an attempt at regime change, or is this an attempt to end the military threat from Iran as it currently stands, including the nuclear program?
This is an attempt to save millions of lives, Israeli lives, lives in the Middle East and across the world. Iran wants to destroy Israel. They're working to destroy Israel, and we believe them. They were on the cusp of achieving several nuclear bombs. This was the very last moment, and we did what we had to do. We're doing what we had to do. We're not talking about regime change as a goal. The goal is to protect us, the Middle East, and the world from a nuclear Iran.
Well, Prime Minister, you've been calling, as you say, for years, for Israel to strike at what you called for many years the head of the octopus. Obviously, Iran had encircled Israel with a wide variety of terror tentacles, ranging from Hamas in the Gaza Strip to Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria to the Houthis in Yemen. This is a major attack, exactly as you had suggested. What do you think the next steps are? There's been a lot of talk about how long this attack will last. It might be multiple days. What do you expect Iran to do in return, and how good is Israel's defense capacity against a possible large-scale missile attack from Iran in response?
Well, this indeed is not a one-off. It's a continuous operation where we're taking out their ballistic missile factories, the Iranian nuclear facilities, military facilities, leadership. So it's a very broad and comprehensive attack, and it'll likely go on for a bit. In terms of defense, Israel has a formidable defense system, but it's not perfect. And therefore, the Israeli citizens have to be in shelters when they're told to, and that'll save lives. And I think we'll together persevere and cross this together.
So, Prime Minister, there's been a lot of talk about the United States, its role in all of this. The Secretary of State, as we'll talk about a little later on the show, came out and released a statement saying, tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran. Our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. There's been an attempt by many to drive a wedge between the Trump administration and the state of Israel. This statement does not appear to me to be a wedge. It more appears to say that Israel has her own interests. America has her own interests. Those interests don't always coincide. Both countries had an interest in Iran not having nuclear capacity. And if Israel chose to take a unilateral action without the direct help of the United States in bombing runs, for example, that does not mean that the United States wouldn't be involved in, for example, shooting down missiles that are coming the other way from Iran, and also that if Iran were to attack anybody involved with the American military, there would be hell to pay.
And that's correct. Israel is a sovereign state. We need to defend ourselves. In the past, we did it twice, and we prevented very radical regimes from acquiring nuclear weapons. I'm talking about Saddam Hussein in 1981 and Assad in 2007. At the time, in the first case, we were condemned, also in the second case. But at the end, the whole world thanked us for preventing them from acquiring nuclear weapons. Imagine a world with Iraq and Syria with nuclear weapons. So we had to act. And this time we're acting again. We don't want to go down the North Korean scenario where words did not stop North Korea from acquiring nuclear weapons. We had to act. We're doing this. Israel is looking after its own national security interest. And that's perfectly fine that America has its own set of interests. We're doing the job. We didn't ask America to do the job for us.
So, Prime Minister Bennett, when you look at the situation in Israel, obviously it's very politically complicated. You, of course, are likely at this point to run in the next Israeli election, whenever that is going to happen. There have been tremendous political divisions. I think what people abroad, not in Israel, need to understand is that this is maybe the one area of Israeli life where there is near universality that this needed to happen. I can't name an Israeli politician on the spectrum who doesn't believe that this was something that needed to happen, given the existential threat that Iran has openly posed to the state of Israel via the development of a nuclear program.
That's correct. There's no right and left on this issue. All Israelis are united that we have to defend ourselves, prevent Iran from being able to destroy Israel.
So, Prime Minister Bennett, when you look at the situation on the ground for Israelis, there's been a huge military call-up, presumably in anticipation of an Iranian response. That response could take the form of anything from on-the-ground attacks launched across the border from Lebanon, or missile attacks from the Houthis, or terrorist groups in the so-called West Bank, Judea, and Samaria being activated against Israelis. Meanwhile, Israelis are basically in a form of lockdown, from what I understand. Obviously, the sirens went off as the Israeli jets were entering Iranian airspace to warn everybody to get in what's called in Hebrew the mamad, which is a safe room. And so millions of Israelis right now are in their safe rooms awaiting the Iranian response. How do you expect this to play out for Israelis domestically over the course of the next few days?
Look, we've been through so much through Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. Iran twice attacked Israel. We tend to forget that. They attacked us twice with hundreds of missiles. We're going to pass this. We're going to do it together. We're going to be fine.
Well, that's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, former Prime Minister of Israel. Really appreciate your time. Stay safe and really appreciate it.
Thank you. You take care.
Okay, well, meanwhile, we have information from the IDF explaining why exactly this happened. Amit Segal, who will be joining us in just a little while on the program, he's an Israeli political analyst, columnist, author. I've recommended before that people check out his Telegram channel, because if you want sort of the very latest on what's going on in Israel, that is an excellent source of information. He reported on that Telegram channel via IDF sources why Israel did this now. Quote, under the guidance of the political echelon, we embarked on a focused and precise operation to remove threats from the entire state of Israel to damage the nuclear program and the long-range missile firing capabilities of the Iranian regime. Why now? We've been following developments for years, and recently we recognize that Iran is racing toward a nuclear bomb. The project is at a stage where if we do not act now, we will know less every day. Okay, that's an important line. Again, the idea here is not that Israel knew that Iran was going to go nuclear next week. The idea was that their intelligence can only keep up with what's going on, so long as what's going on moves relatively slowly. If Iran races to a bomb, by the time Israel finds out about it, it may be too late and Iran now has a nuclear weapon. According to those IDF sources, in addition, Iran has thousands of ballistic missiles, which in themselves are an existential threat. We are also identifying attempts to arm proxies in the Middle East against the state of Israel. In recent years, they've begun to formulate a concrete plan to destroy the state of Israel. We are now in a strategic window of opportunity, a point of no return, and we have no choice but to act. We launched the operation at a point where the threat is real, and in the face of this, our operational readiness is good. We are conducting an ongoing situation assessment. The operation will evolve as necessary. We will now launch a campaign asking the public not to send locations of vulnerabilities or to document them. We will work to provide at least 10 minutes warning before missile firing or any other type of event. Meanwhile, again, the IDF is suggesting that the Iranians had plans for a more widespread attack on Israel, including widespread and precise fire from the entire Iranian axis, a ground invasion using pickup trucks from all borders, also undermining regimes that are allied with the United States, including Jordan and Egypt. The IDF spokesperson made an announcement explaining what exactly is going on as well. Quote, the IDF spokesperson announces that a short time ago, the IDF, under the guidance of the political echelon, launched a precise and integrated preemptive strike based on high-quality intelligence with the aim of striking the Iranian nuclear program and in response to the Iranian regime's ongoing aggression against Israel. Dozens of Air Force aircraft recently completed the opening strike, which included attacking dozens of military targets, including nuclear targets in various areas of Iran. The public has been instructed to obey what are called home front command instructions, telling people to stay home, not go to school. Essentially, if you're not an essential employee, you're supposed to stay indoors in a safe room at this point. As the IDF points out, the Iranian regime is the primary perpetrator of all terrorist attacks committed against the state of Israel since the beginning of the Iron Swords War. That would be the beginning of the Gaza War. And in doing so, also for arming and financing the Hamas terror organization responsible for the events of October 7th. During the Iron Swords War, Iran even attacked Israel twice directly, firing hundreds of missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles into the country. The Iranian regime, of course, has made it a stated goal that they wish to destroy the state of Israel. Senior Iranian regime officials continue to declare this. By the way, that's true. Daily, we played clips of them on the show. The IDF has announced this is going to be a multi-day operation. This is not going to be a one-off, as you just heard the former prime minister suggest. This is going to be relatively lengthy because, of course, Israel does not have B-2s or B-52s. The targets that have been identified thus far include Tabriz, Kermanshah, Arak, Isfahan, Natanz, and Tehran. Those are all places where we have reports of ordnance hitting ground. Israel has already closed its airspace to civilian traffic. All flights arriving at or departing from Ben Gurion near Tel Aviv have now been canceled. Apparently, according to the New York Times, Israel has attacked at least 6 military bases around Tehran, including Parchin, and residential homes at 2 highly secure complexes, 4 military commandments, and multiple residential buildings around Tehran, what appears to be targeted assassinations. So, again, a highly sophisticated attack by Israel, a highly sophisticated attack targeting its direct enemies, direct threats. There are reports coming out that the president of the United States was watching this in the Situation Room as it unfolded. Reporter Aviva Klampus says a senior U.S. intelligence official says the U.S. provided real-time reconnaissance support to Israel before, during, and after the ongoing strikes, using secure channels to coordinate every step. And again, what that means is that the United States was not directly involved in the attacks. The United States has plausible deniability. The United States was involved in negotiations. But the idea that Israel went without any sort of prior American knowledge, that seems unlikely at best, based on the information that is currently emerging and also based on the way that this week went. Again, this week, there was obviously a shift in the assessment of the Trump administration of the possibility of coming to some sort of actual serious nuclear agreement that would disarm the Iranian nuclear program. And so it appeared clearer and clearer this week that the Trump administration was taking a far more skeptical position than they had just a few weeks ago. Here was President Trump just last night. He was at the Kennedy Center, and here he was explaining that Iran cannot have a nuke. And he said things are going to happen. Well, things did happen. And again, the United States did not have to be directly involved. Now, it is in the United States' interest to shoot down ordnance that's going the other way. Again, I read Secretary Rubio's statement in a moment. I'll get back to it in a moment. Here's President Trump 48 hours ago.
Well, they are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. But they are being, we've given notice to move out, and we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that can be done to dial the temperature down in the region?
They can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simply. They can't have a nuclear weapon. We're not going to allow that.
Now, again, something changed this week in the way that the United States was assessing the situation. That is not a shock. Iran began becoming extremely aggressive in its statements about the United States, about its desire for a nuclear weapon, about its desire to take out American troops. Those threats were overt. They were not covert. That's why it always seemed like a bit of a pipe dream that Steve Witkoff was going to negotiate something on Sunday in Oman. Again, the statement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio provides the United States with the plausibly deniable position that it was not involved, which it wasn't. And the United States was not directly involved in this action. Again, there are reports that intelligence sharing may have occurred here. That would not be a surprise. The United States shares intelligence with a wide variety of our allies ranging from Great Britain to Saudi Arabia to Israel. Secretary of State Rubio, however, said, tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran. Our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. That last part is the important part. If Iran were to come back at the United States, their oil fields would be gone tomorrow and the Ayatollahs would be dead. That is a point made openly by Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Quote, Iran is the world's worst state sponsor of terrorism, has the blood of thousands of Americans on its hands, and is rushing to build not only nuclear weapons, but also missiles that can strike the United States. We back Israel to the hilt all the way, and if the Ayatollahs harm a single American, that will be the end of the Ayatollahs. By the way, that is certainly true of President Trump. President Trump is not going to sit still if Americans die in response to this, because Iran decides for some odd reason that they wish to provoke the sleeping tiger that is the Trump administration and the American military. Good luck to them. That'd be the worst move they ever made. Seriously. That is why all of the talk about the loose talk from all the same people who are constantly suggesting nuclear war is on the brink. From whom and between whom would be the question. Iran is not nuclear. That's the whole point of destroying their nuclear capacity right now. Israel is doing the world an enormous favor. An Iranian nuclear capacity would threaten not only Israel, but Europe, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain. And for people in the United States who believe that geopolitics doesn't matter, hey, we're oil independent. Let's be clear. The international oil markets are international oil markets. What does that mean? It means that if the price of oil spikes in Europe and spikes in Asia and spikes all around the world because of what's going on in the Middle East or because Iran destabilizes the entire region, well, American oil producers are going to start exporting that oil to different parts, which means it's more expensive in the United States too, because that's how markets work, and that's how shipping works, and that's how oil supply works. Well, joining us on the line in Israel right now, Josh Hammer. Josh, of course, is the author of a wide variety of fantastic columns and books. He also is the author of a brand new book titled Israel and Civilization. Josh was woken up in the middle of the night by the latest. Josh, how are things on the ground? This is not exactly how you thought that your trip to Israel was going to go this week.
No, to put it mildly. No, Ben, we woke up at 3 a.m. here to national sirens, essentially. This is our first time, my wife and I, traveling with our new baby. So this is not exactly how we thought things would play out. It's actually the second time just this week that we had something happen, Ben. And we were getting dinner the other night in Jaffa, the Tel Aviv area, beautiful dinner right on the ocean there. And there was a Houthi ballistic missile. The sirens were loud. We ran. Took the stroller down a flight of stairs in the middle of dinner into the emergency room, then went up, finished our dinners. This is the second time in 1 week that our trip has been interrupted. We're supposed to drive to Jerusalem in a few hours to spend Shabbat there, the Jewish Sabbath. You mentioned my book. We're supposed to have an event for my book in Jerusalem this Sunday night. I think suffice to say, everything right now is certainly in flux right now.
Well, speaking of your experiences a little bit earlier, I think that folks need to understand that the level of attack to which Israel has been subjected since October 7th, it is relentless and unceasing. I mean, the Houthis have been attacking nearly every day. And when I was in Israel just a few weeks ago, my family was woken up at 6:25 a.m. by what we called the Houthi alarm clock because the sirens went off in Jerusalem. And what that means is you got to take all your kids and you got to shove all your kids into a fairly small room and then essentially take these iron window shades and close them in case shrapnel were to hit the house. Now, given the fact that you're on the ground right now, what is the attitude of people there toward all of this? We just spoke with the former Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, about what's going on. He says that this may be the one area of Israeli life where actually there is no argument, where there's pretty much unanimity.
Yeah, Ben, I've been to Israel many times over the years, as I know you have as well. And I think back in particular to this one trip that I took in 2016. So it was actually my final year of law school at the University of Chicago. And I was one of the student leaders in a law school delegation. And we met with this very far left member of the Israeli Knesset, their legislature here. I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember his party. But the point is, it was 2016 in the context of that presidential election. I kid you not, this Knesset member was so far left, Ben, that his preferred presidential candidate that cycle was Bernie Sanders himself. Having said that, and the reason I bring it up right now in this very moment is because the Iran issue came up in that conversation, and he basically sounded as hawkish as it gets on Iran. So essentially, no matter how far left you are, unless you're one of the Arab parties here, if you are a Jewish Israeli, no matter where you fall on the Israeli domestic political spectrum, from the quote unquote far right to the far left, you're pretty much of one mind. on the Iranian issue. I mean, this is not the one state, two state solution. This is not Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank. This is not the Haredi, the so-called ultra-Orthodox draft issue. This is not one of the more divisive issues here in Israel. Iran is by far, by orders of magnitude, the number one threat here, and Israel is going to do what it has to do. But to your commentary earlier here, I think the thing to remember for the folks back home, this is the entire purpose, Ben. And you obviously know this, but this is the entire purpose of the U.S.-Israel alliance, is that America and the rest of Western civilization benefits from Israel doing their dirty work for them there. Yes, it beggars belief that America did not have advance warning. Maybe there was even a little more operational or tactical support than we know at this time. It's possible there's something like mid-air refueling over Iraqi or Kuwaiti airspace. We don't know. We'll probably find out in due time. But the point is, no matter what it was, the United States will be a safer nation on the other side of this on the relative cheap, because Israel is not just doing what any sovereign nation state would do to protect its citizens and its way of life, but it really is doing a tremendous favor to the United States and all of the Western world, I would argue.
And of course, Israel has done this before when they took out the Osirak reactor in Iraq in 1981. They were condemned by large swaths of the world, including the United States, actually, under the Reagan administration. At the time, Israel also in the mid-2000s took out what appeared to be a nascent Syrian nuclear reactor. Imagine if that had fallen into the hands of HTS, for example, or ISIS in Syria, if Israel had not done that. So there's always sort of condemnation from certain wings in preemptively destroying nuclear facilities that are to be run by some of the world's scariest and worst people. But it turns out the world seems to take some comfort in the fact that Israel is always there to do the dirty work. That includes, by the way, nations like Saudi Arabia. I guarantee you that the Saudis tonight are sleeping more secure in their beds because Israel is doing what Israel is doing. Saudi has always allowed Israel to do its dirty work against the Iranians. It's also true of UAE. It's true of Bahrain. It's true of Egypt. It's true of Jordan. There are all these regimes that are overtly unfriendly to Israel that are constantly living off of the largesse of the fact that Israel is the tip of the spear in attacking many of their enemies. I mean, the Egyptian regime is just as much in danger from Iran, and the Jordanian regime is more in danger from Iran than the Israeli government, actually.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia literally, they didn't actively shoot down or intercept the Iranian ballistic missiles, but they allowed their airspace to be used for American and Israeli air defense missile interception during the October 2024 barrage, the 180 missiles or whatever it was, the largest, prior to now at least, the largest missile barrage in global history, actually. So the Saudis actually have shown that when push comes to shove, they are willing to side or err on the side of lowering the threats of the Iranian regime. And this is not a particularly well-kept secret. I mean, essentially every Arab country in the world, other than Qatar and maybe some of the Northern African countries, Algeria, Tunisia come to mind. Those are essentially both Muslim Brotherhood adjacent rogue states at this point there. But with very few exceptions, most of the Arab world, I guarantee you, is very, very, very happy at this point. They can't say it because the Arab world, it's a very cultural thing. They're quite cowardly people in many ways. Not always. I'm painting with broad brushes here or there. But they're not going to go out and put out a shiny press release praising the men and women of the IDF, to put it mildly there. But I guarantee you that back home, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBZ over in Abu Dhabi, all the various high-ranking emirs and sheikhs there in the Gulf states, again, other than perhaps Doha, they are definitely very happy with what the IDF is currently doing on the ground in Iran.
We're speaking with Josh Hammer. He's the author of Israel and Civilization, host of The Josh Hammer Show, syndicated columnist at Newsweek. And, of course, he is live from Israel right now. It is quite early in the morning, but I'm sure not many people in Israel are getting a lot of sleep tonight as they await the response from the Iranians. Presumably, they're expecting some sort of large-scale missile barrage from the Iranians sometime in the near future. So, Josh, obviously, there have been a lot of people who are in the online world, should I say the very online world, who have fun suggesting that all of this is going to lead to World War III, neglecting, of course, the fact that if Iran actually had a nuclear weapon, a World War III would likely be nuclear. And number two, when they suggest that there is going to be either a ground invasion of Iran or a broader regional or global war over this, I don't understand, frankly, how they get from point A to point B on that one. Who would be doing the invading precisely? Who has even called for a ground invasion of Iran? If the idea is the Israelis are going to do that, that would be a little bit weird, considering that the population of Israel right now is approximately 10 million people, and about only 7.5 million of those people are Jewish, and the population of Iran is 91 million people. So that'd be a very strange ground invasion, especially given the fact that the distance from Israel to Iran is somewhere around 2,300 kilometers, something like that. So I'm not sure how they get from point A to point B, but I don't think they need to. It seems to be just a gigantic scare tactic. Again, that can really only be justified by a peculiarly isolationist view of American policy that suggests that American interests are in and of themselves bad, or that suggests that any sort of peace through strength activity is more likely to lead to war.
Yeah, look, I think history here is instructive. So you mentioned Osirak, 1981. That's when Israel took out the Iraqi nuclear reactor. There was Syria, 2007, where something very similar happened. The Bush administration was not happy about that. But both times Israel ended up going with not exactly the full endorsement, shall we say, of the president. And those were actually Republican presidents both times. It was Ronald Reagan in 1981 at Osirak, and it was George W. Bush in 2007 with the Syrian operation there. And both times Israel was essentially belatedly thanked for, in retrospect, having done the right thing there. So, look, the politics of these things are always very sticky in the moment. Americans are a war-weary people in many ways there. But this is clearly, and this is obviously not going to be a major global conflict or anything remotely like that. The notion that China or a secondary power like Russia would swoop to the defense of Iran, which is a ramshackle country that has essentially nothing whatsoever going for it, other than a lot of decent people, a lot of actually secular, westernized Persian people. You know, they have decent human capital, but other than that, as far as their capital is concerned, they have petroleum, and that's essentially it there. The notion that China or Russia would lift a finger to defend Iran and try to escalate against Israel and its many allies, including foremost the United States, it's ludicrous. It is an absolutely ludicrous, laughable suggestion there. Again, it's fear-mongering tactics there, but I think it just misses the game as far as the global line structure and as far as realpolitik is concerned there, because they're significantly overweighting the significance of the Iranian regime as far as the bad guys are concerned there. I don't think China particularly cares about Iran, to be honest with you. You know, China was playing nice with bin Salman and the Saudis during the Biden administration too. Now Trump has kind of swooped the Saudis back in there, but no one particularly cares about Iran. Iran is in many ways a deeply rogue state there, and Israel, when push comes to shove, they do have drastically superior military power in virtually everywhere.
Not only that, I mean, the reality is that if things were to escalate, the first thing that goes to the Iranian oil fields, which takes away legitimately their only economic asset whatsoever. Right. And as you say, the people of Iran have not liked the regime for a very long time. In many ways, the people of Iran are sort of the opposite of the people of Gaza. The people of Gaza are very fond of the terror groups that ran them by polling data, and the people of Iran hate the people who run them. And if they actually had their druthers, that would be a moderate, secularized regime. That's Josh Hammer. He's author of Israel and Civilization, host of The Josh Hammer Show, and he is live with us from Israel tonight. Well, it looks like morning is breaking over there, so we'll see if you are able to escape the Mamad for any part of the day and maybe enjoy a little bit of sunshine in the interim between missile attacks. Josh, really appreciate the time.
God bless, Ben. Thank you.
Stay safe. Meanwhile, the defense minister, Israel Katz, has now issued a statement to members of the General Staff Forum. Says this is a defining moment in the history of the state of Israel and the history of the Jewish people. The IDF is launching an operation against the head of the Iranian octopus to thwart its capabilities and remove the threat of destruction from the state of Israel. Iran is more determined than ever to realize its vision of destroying Israel, and we are at a key point where, if we miss it, we'll have no way to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons that will threaten our existence. Over the years, especially over the past few months, the IDF has built exceptional capabilities in the fields of intelligence and operations, in defense and offense, that enable us to cope well with the great challenges facing us. And again, one of the things that I find quite bizarre about all of this is this line that's being taken that we were on the verge, the United States, of an agreement with the Iranians. No, we were certainly not. No, we were certainly not. Okay, the fact of the matter is that every statement that came out from the Trump administration over the course of the last 2 weeks was directly opposed by the statements from the Iranian regime. The Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, he says Israel has dialogue with the U.S., but the attack against Iran was an independent Israeli decision for what it is worth. So that's kind of best available situation for the United States, frankly, is that Israel ends up doing the dirty work. The United States' obligations are effectively minimal, limited presumably to knocking down missiles going the other way at Israeli population centers, and the nuclear facilities go bye-bye. That seems like a pretty good outcome. And again, it is Steve Witkoff who earlier this week was saying that Iran could never get a nuclear capability. Here was Witkoff this is like a couple of days ago.
Must never be permitted to enrich uranium or develop any nuclear capabilities. An existential threat to Israel as does an Iran with a large amount of missiles. That is as big an existential threat as the nuclear threat. And this is an existential threat to the United States and the free world and the entire GCC.
Yoram Hazony, who is a philosopher and also a charter member of sort of the national conservatism community, one of the founders of the National Conservatism Conference, he writes from Israel tonight, Israel attacks Iran because we believe Iran is assembling nuclear weapons to be used against us. This is not an assessment of one Israeli political figure or party. It represents a consensus here in Jerusalem. Anyone saying this attack is an affront to the United States is serving Iranian regime propaganda, whether out of gullibility or malice. Israelis love the United States and especially revere President Trump and his administration. By the way, by polling data, that is 100% true. And again, as a frequent visitor to Israel, I can tell you, the feeling when President Trump was elected was overwhelming love and joy. Overwhelming, like nonstop. Like they cannot wait to welcome President Trump to Israel. They'll name half the country after him. No one has been better to us than President Trump, says Yoram Hazony. Israelis are grateful for all he has done. But President Trump understands what some clearly do not. It is Israel's responsibility to protect its people against a fanatical regime that has sought to destroy us using every means at its disposal. If we choose to attack a potential arsenal of between 10 to 15 nuclear weapons before they can be made ready for use, we are only doing what any other nation would do in our shoes, protecting our country and our people against a clear and present danger that cannot be dealt with in any other way. We are all of us brothers in a war against forces that openly and shamelessly seek our annihilation. Whatever happens in this Israeli-Iranian war, we'll still be brothers and we'll still have much work to do together when it has ended. That, of course, is true. Also, I think that you can look forward to seeing in the protests against President Trump this weekend many, many flags of the Iranian regime. Because if there is an evil regime on planet Earth, the protesters who are protesting the military and President Trump and America, they will certainly be flying that flag. Meanwhile, confirmation that Israel has taken out General Hossein Salami, the former commander-in-chief of the IRGC, as well as a General Cholam, I don't want to get his name incorrect here, Cholamali Rashid. Cholamali Rashid is a high-ranking Iranian military officer, as well as two of the top nuclear scientists in Iran. Additional explosions have also just been reported at the nuclear facility in Natanz. So for those who are deeply concerned about the prospect of nuclear war, you should be very, very happy that Iran appears not to be on the verge of achieving it quite so quickly anymore. Okay, in just a moment, we are going to be joined by Amit Segal, who is a reporter from Israel. Also, again, the fact is that what Israel just did is very much in keeping with what President Trump wanted to happen, meaning no Iranian nuclear weapon. And whether that is achieved by American diplomatic legerdemain, which was not going to happen, I've said this from the beginning, it was not going to happen. Iran was never going to voluntarily give up its pathway to a nuclear bomb. It was not going to happen. Iran could have done it at any time. Just remember, in the same way that the war in Gaza could be over today if Hamas went into exile and gave up the hostages, Iran could have re-entered the world economy at any time for the past several decades simply by giving up its nuclear regime. And it decided not to do that. President Trump has said over and over and over again, Iran can't have nuclear weapons, over and over and over again, that a JCPOA 2.0 would not cut it. And Israel simply reified what the on-the-ground situation was. So again, for those who are just tuning in, Israel has been spending the evening striking Iran's nuclear facilities, as well as the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, who was killed in the attack. The videos emerging from Tehran. Videos emerging also from Natanz. There's smoke coming from the Natanz Iran nuclear facility. President Trump, according to the Wall Street Journal, is scheduled to participate in a National Security Council meeting Friday at 11 a.m. at the White House, according to his official schedule. The White House offered no other information about the meeting. And we'll see just how deeply Israel was able to damage the nuclear facilities. But this is only step one. Israel has already announced that they're going to continue these attacks. This is not a one-off. This is the largest attack on Iran since the Iran-Iraq War of 1990. And again, let's put it this way. I would be very, very surprised if there was no intelligence cooperation between Israel and the United States on this. This obviously did not come as a full-scale surprise to the United States. So we'll continue bringing you updates all evening long. And the fact that President Trump spent weeks and months trying to get the Iranians to take a deal, and they would not, for hell or high water, take the deal, is why this is happening. That is why this is happening right now. Joining us on the line is maybe the most connected reporter and political analyst in Israel, Amit Segal. Of course, you can watch him on Channel 12 when you're in Israel, and I highly recommend his Telegram channel, which is excellent. Amit, thanks so much for joining the program.
Thanks, Ben. Good morning from Jerusalem.
Yeah, so first of all, I see that you're broadcasting from a book-lined room. I assume that is, if not a mamad, close to a mamad, given the situation in Israel. I expect that the expectations are in Israel that there will be a barrage of incoming Iranian ordnance sometime this morning, I would assume.
Yes, actually, I think it should have happened already, but the Iranians are shocked. Israel just killed, give or take, 24 of its leadership, including many senior officials and the nuclear scientists. But yes, we do expect a harsh Iranian response. Last time, on October 1st, 2024, it was more than 200 ballistic missiles. So I would say it can be even more than this, which means we are going to tough days.
So, Amit, obviously, there had been a long-standing debate in Israel over when to do this. There is virtual unanimity in Israel that this needed to be done. What do you think were the factors that led to Prime Minister Netanyahu finally pulling the trigger? Because obviously there were a lot of people advocating that he do this months and months and months ago, specifically after Israel cleared the skies above Iran.
Well, Israel's Netanyahu's raison d'etre was attacking Iran, preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. What happened here began on October 7th. The moment the two Iranian-supported commando divisions invaded Israel from Gaza led to a full-scale war in the Middle East. And there is an understanding in Israel that Iran, the head of the snake, the head of the octopus, must be cut. Now, here's the thing. Prior to October 7th, and this is something that no one could have seen back then, there was a fear in Israel to attack Iran because the fear was that Hamas and Hezbollah would reiterate, thus leading to a regional war. Now, attacking Iran is the end of the regional war. Hamas is, give or take, eliminated. Hezbollah is paralyzed. The Houthis are not a real risk. So it's Iran alone. And if you bear in mind that Israel already destroyed Iran's anti-aircraft systems like S-300, you see that I don't know what, I'm in terms of soccer. There is no goalkeeper in the Iranian team. And I think this what led to the Israel decision, by the way, coordinated with President Trump to attack Iran.
So you say they're coordinated with President Trump. Obviously, the Trump administration has said that they were not involved in the strikes. There's supposed to theoretically be a negotiation between Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, and Iranian envoys on Sunday. Ron Dermer, who, of course, is special advisor to the prime minister in Israel, was going to brief Witkoff and discuss with Witkoff before that meeting actually happened. What do you make of all the talk about what was supposed to happen in Oman on Sunday? Was that a misdirect? Was that the Israelis basically deciding, listen, these talks are going nowhere and the Americans may as well keep their hands clean? What do you think was happening here?
I think it's fully coordinated, and I'll explain. President Trump on April 12th had given Iran 60 days for negotiations. Today, June 13, Israeli time, marks the 61st day, which means that Trump actually did what he had promised. So this is one thing. The second is that it's quite smart, in my opinion, from Secretary Rubio and the U.S. administration to say that this is an Israeli strike, which is, of course, correct, because they don't want Americans to be hit by Iranians across the Middle East. But I do think, and I know that it is fully coordinated, including the misleading. I would call all the last weeks as a campaign of what was defined in Sherlock Holmes books, hide in plain sight. You cannot actually disguise such preparations for attacks. Israel is a small country, and when dozens of aircrafts are taking off from military bases across Israel, every Israeli hears it. So the idea was to actually externalize it, to actually give it publicity, thus giving Iranians the thought that if it's such a secret, it doesn't make any sense that they are going to attack us. I mean, they cannot attack us after they announced. Well, they could. You see that the leadership of the Iranian regime, the Iranian military senior figures, didn't see it coming. They were sleeping in their beds while killed by Mossad agents, by Israeli missiles, and by other secret weapons.
So, Amit, looking at the course of the next few days, we've heard from the IDF this is going to be a multi-day operation. This is not a one-off. This is not one bombing run. And we also know that, as you say, Iran is likely to fire back a large barrage of missiles. There's also been some talk about Iran activating terror cells in the so-called West Bank, Judea and Samaria, the possibility of attacks across the border from Lebanon. What are you expecting in Israel?
Well, here is the Iranian tragedy. They have done all of this for the last decades, which means that they now don't have any weapons that they have not used so far. They tried to actually initiate terrorist attacks in Israel prior to October 7th. They actually helped and funded October 7th. They funded Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas. So now they are alone. Yes, they can fire hundreds of ballistic missiles, but Israel has interceptors. I guess there is going to be damage, but it's not something permanent or devastating. I guess, and I even more than guess, that the U.S. would help Israel to actually defend itself, as it did under the Biden administration in April 2024.
So, again, looking at where you think this is going, so it's unclear at this point. There was a lot of talk before this attack that Israel, did they have the capacity to actually take out the nuclear facilities? What kind of damage could they do? And so, obviously, Israel has extraordinary intelligence penetration of Iran. I mean, their ability to take out top leaders in Iran is astonishing. I mean, we're now learning that perhaps 24 senior figures at the top, including possibly Ali Shamkhani, who's the head of the Iranian nuclear program and a senior advisor to the Supreme Leader Khamenei, may have been taken out tonight. Now, that Israel has always been very good at. The question was always a question of ordnance when it came to Natanz, Fordow, some of the nuclear facilities that were supposedly very heavily protected, heavily cemented. What do you make of that?
Okay, so two things. First, what we see here is only the first phase in a quite a long attack. This was only the first round, eliminating the leadership, then eliminating the rest of the anti-aircraft systems, and then comes the Iranian nuclear program. We already see smoke coming from Natanz and Qom and other nuclear facilities. As far as I know, Israel can take the nuclear program 18 to 24 months back. And here's the American question. Would President Trump say, we have not taken part in this Israeli attack, but now, if you try to recover your nuclear abilities, you have business with us. We would attack. This is the question. So there is an Israeli attack, and the question to follow is that will there be an American stake?
So the Israelis have said so far that there is no regime change in progress, that they're not looking for regime change at this point. They, however, did take out the entire top echelon, it appears, of the IRGC. And obviously, they have taken out the nuclear facilities, or at least severely hampered them, or will this week. Now, given that fact, does Israel have an assessment of the stability of the Iranian regime? Are they in trouble, or are they still stable despite all of their economic limitations and now severe military limitations?
There are military limitations. Iran is a sick country with extremely unpopular, corrupt regime. And the sentiment in Israel over the last few months was that following the billions of dollars wasted from the Iranian taxpayer money on projects like Hezbollah and Hamas, it would require only a small, another small step to actually topple the Iranian regime. Now, we don't know how to topple regimes. It never happens as you expected. Americans are fully aware of it. Israelis are aware of it. So I can't predict what is going to happen to the Iranian regime. I just know that when millions of Iranians woke up in Tehran in the middle of the night, in the dead of the night, to hear explosions, to hear the death of senior figures, it's actually not going to strengthen the Iranian regime.
Well, that is Amit Segal, again, one of the best reporters in Israel. You should check out his Telegram channel at Amit Segal. Amit, really appreciate the time and stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Well, in just a few minutes, Senator Ted Cruz is scheduled to join us as well. We are covering, obviously, soup to nuts, what's going on in Iran tonight. Iranian sources are now reporting that the commander of the Khatem al-Anbiya compound in Tehran, Major General Gholam Ali Rashid, was also killed. According to sources, Dr. Firdausan Abbasi, who previously headed the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, is dead as well. So a huge number of top officials in Iran have now been killed by the Israelis. That is an astonishing achievement. And one of the top commanders, the chief commander of the IRGC, this Major General Hossein Salami, literally 2 days ago said, quote, "Our next confrontation with the Israelis will be far more crushing, devastating, and destructive." Well, he's not going to live to see it since he's now dead. And what we are watching is, again, a truly sophisticated military operation carried out by the Israelis. Iranian television has already added a black ribbon of mourning onto their posts on television so far. CNN is reporting no U.S. involvement and no U.S. assistance. Again, there's a lot of different information that's coming out at this point. Here was CNN reporting this just a few moments ago.
In terms of U.S. involvement, no indication of U.S. involvement at this point, or is there? What are you hearing?
Anderson, is an excellent question because there's normally very close coordination between the U.S. and Israel, especially when it comes to Iran and threats in the region. And we have seen that in previous rounds when it comes to, for example, the air defense of Israel against Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks. This time, it seems like there's at least some kind of shift here. We have just heard from a U.S. official that the U.S. is aware of the strikes, but crucially, there is no U.S. involvement and no U.S. assistance, an indication that Israel may well have moved on its own here. A key question, how much, if any, notification did they give the United States? It's a significant statement from that U.S. official because it shows the different tracks here, as the U.S., at least from what we understand, was trying to pursue diplomacy. Israel had other intents, preparing a strike over the course of the past several weeks. That's something the U.S. was watching closely, and now ultimately making the decision to carry out that strike here, at least from what we understand, without U.S. involvement and without U.S. assistance. There is normally a tremendous amount of cooperation, especially on the intel and preparation side of these, but here it doesn't seem like there was that level that we have seen in the past. Perhaps it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. We have seen the U.S. act on its own without Israel several times, specifically Trump making decisions on his own. And that would be, for example, here, a ceasefire deal with the Houthis, sort of surprising Netanyahu in the Oval Office with talks on Iran. And there have been several other instances, for example, when Trump came to the region.
Again, there is conflicting reporting regarding the coordination between America and Israel over this particular strike. Suffice it to say that President Trump said no nuclear Iran. And Israel took that seriously. Joining us on the line tonight, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Senator, thanks so much for taking the time.
Ben, good to be with you.
So just a few moments ago, you tweeted out, President Trump has been clear that Iran must completely dismantle their nuclear capacity. Iran has given President Trump the middle finger. Israel is acting to defend themselves, and we should stand with them. You know, what do you make of the administration's position on this so far? So Secretary Rubio said that Israel acted on its own, also said that if you touch American soldiers, we will essentially pummel you. You will not exist anymore, which is absolutely correct. What do you make of the current status of relations there?
Well, listen, there are two messages that are critical to be heard tonight. Number one, America stands unequivocally with Israel. Period. The end. That is critically important. Israel is acting to defend herself against the existential threat of an Iranian nuclear weapon. But number two, and this is equally important, look, we have a very large number of American servicemen and women in bases in the Middle East that are in harm's way. And I want to ask every one of your listeners, every one of your viewers, if you're a person of faith, pray for Israel tonight. Pray for Israel, pray for Jerusalem, and pray for our servicemen and women, the Americans in harm's way. And a message that I think is critically important, I want the Ayatollah to hear. If you attack American military bases, if you kill even a single American serviceman or woman, I am absolutely confident that President Trump will respond with overwhelming force. Understand that every serviceman and woman we have in the Middle East is at risk tonight. They are in harm's way. And millions of Israelis. I spoke earlier this evening, Ben, with the Israeli ambassador to the United States. He described some incredible successes they're winning in this war tonight. Successes taking out the head of the IRGC, taking out the successor to the head of the IRGC, doing massive damage to Natanz, the nuclear facility that Iran is building. All of those are incredibly important. But at the same time, the people of Israel are standing either in bomb shelters or near bomb shelters because Iran has a massive ballistic missile arsenal. And there is a very real risk in the coming hours that we will see a massive ballistic missile strike on Israel. Now, Israel will keep trying to get the job done. Prime Minister Netanyahu understands that. He understands that there may be a significant number of Israelis whose lives are lost tonight. But the reason I believe he did this is his judgment that an Iranian nuclear weapon risks millions of Israelis being murdered. Because if the Ayatollah acquires nuclear weapons, I think there's a very real possibility we could discover it through a detonation over the skies of Tel Aviv or New York or Los Angeles. And so Israel is acting to defend herself and to keep her citizens safe.
Now, you've mentioned several times there, Senator Cruz, what is absolutely true, which is that obviously we do have an enormous number of troops in this area. Iran has been threatening those troops. It would be the worst mistake they ever made. I mean, truly, the worst mistake they ever made would be touching American troops, because not only would they themselves, the Ayatollahs, be at severe risk of physical harm, but also the oil fields, which are the remaining asset of the Iranian regime, are wide open at this point. And that is that's the dog that's not biting yet. Israel so far has struck military targets. They've struck nuclear targets. They've struck nuclear scientists and military leaders, but they've not touched the final remaining domino in the Iranian economy and the only earning part of the Iranian economy, which is the oil fields. If the oil fields were to go up in flames, there's no way the regime could possibly survive that, given the current situation there. And so when you talk about the fact that the Iranians better not screw with the United States, I mean, that obviously is true. And again, I think that the way this worked out for the United States is actually quite salutary. I think this is quite wonderful for the United States. The Israelis went and did this on their own. The United States was not directly involved, not implicated in this attack. And that means that if the Iranians decide to try and take it out on the United States, that's on their head.
Yeah. Look, I think that's exactly right. I think there will be two consequences if Iran attacks America. I think, number one, you're right that their oil facilities will be taken out. That is devastating to the economy of Iran. But I think there's a very real possibility if they attack and murder U.S. servicemen and women, that the Ayatollah may not live through the night. And so the consequences of attacking Americans are massive. And in this case, and I want to say something else. Look, Israel is in a very real sense doing a favor to America tonight. The Ayatollah regularly in front of mobs chants death to America and death to Israel. If history teaches anything, it is that if someone tells you they want to murder you, you should believe them. The Ayatollah, tonight, Israel took out the head of the IRGC. The IRGC is responsible for murdering over 600 U.S. servicemen and women. And so in a very real sense, Israel has struck back at a regime that has actively murdered Americans, that is the leading state sponsor of terrorism. And by the way, Iran's war of terror was financed by the over $100 billion that the Biden administration and Democrats flooded into Iran. And this is Israel reacting to defend themselves from the billions of dollars that Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed the Ayatollah to use to develop nuclear weapons.
President Trump is the right president for this unique moment in time, and it takes a real level of moral clarity to understand the threat that Iran poses. It's something that he has been absolutely 100% clear on since the first day he ran for office, that the JCPOA put in place by President Obama was a disaster area. He was the president who pulled us out of the JCPOA, and he has maintained consistently, despite all of the supposed media coverage from right and left, that he had changed any position. He has never changed his position on the idea that Iran could never go nuclear and that their nuclear program had to be completely dismantled. And so the fact that he continued to convey that gave Israel, for sure, the breathing room to be able to go and do this attack on its own.
Well, Ben, as you know, I led a letter of 52 Republican senators that we all came together and we said, we agree with President Donald J. Trump. President Trump has said repeatedly, the red line is that Iran must have complete dismantlement of its enrichment capacity, that every centrifuge must be shut down. They must have no capacity to enrich uranium at all. Now, what President Trump said is you can either do that nicely through diplomacy, or you can do that through warfare. And I will say, Iran, I think what happened tonight was inevitable. Iran this morning announced they were not going to shut down any centrifuge, and indeed they were going to build more, that they were moving full speed ahead. And that announcement was effectively a middle finger to President Trump. And it was also telling Israel, you better attack us now because we're going to keep going till we get a nuclear weapon. And once we get a nuclear weapon, millions of Israelis are at risk. And so this was a decision the Ayatollah provoked. I will also note that President Trump said on April 12th, he told Iran, you have 60 days to negotiate. Today is the 60th day. And so Iran decided, we don't want to negotiate. We don't want peace. We want a nuclear weapon, because when the Ayatollah says death to Israel and death to America, I believe him. And that's why Israel is acting tonight.
Senator Cruz, the spokesman for the General Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, put out a statement, and I will see how well you parse this text, because it's sort of fascinating what it doesn't say. It says the Zionist enemy and the United States will pay a hefty price. Iran will respond harshly to the Zionist regime. The Zionist attack on civilian areas has been verified, and our response will be certain. Iran is at 100% military capability, and the enemy will suffer a painful blow. Well, I mean, number one, they're certainly not at 100% military capability, and they like to talk this way all the time. The parsing of the text that I noticed was the spokesperson said, the Zionist enemy and the United States will pay a hefty price. Iran will respond harshly to the Zionist regime. I noticed that they didn't say that they'd respond to the United States, because I think that they know precisely what you are talking about, that it's a lot of empty verbiage with regard to the United States, because it is one thing to poke at Israel. It is a very different thing to poke at the greatest fighting force in literally the history of planet Earth.
Yeah, I think that's right. The most laughable statement, the element of that statement was that the Iranian military force is at 100%. Iran is badly and deeply weakened. You look at Israel. Israel has utterly decimated Hamas. Hamas is a proxy force for Iran. Iran provides over 90% of the funding for Hamas. Israel has also utterly destroyed Hezbollah, including through the incredible operation with pagers and walkie-talkies, where Hezbollah gave pagers to their terrorists. The pagers blew up and killed and wounded a vast number of those terrorists. Israel also and Iran saw Bashar Assad, the dictator of Syria and a puppet for Iran, being toppled. All of those have weakened Iran dramatically, as have the attacks taking out the Iranian air defenses, all of which means the Iranian military is in an incredibly weakened state. Now, that being said, Iran has a vast arsenal of ballistic missiles, and unfortunately, what I expect is they're going to launch a major attack on Israel. Israel knows this. Israel has instructed Israelis be in bomb shelters, be near bomb shelters, but there is going to be a strike back on Israel. My prayers tonight, Heidi and I are lifting up the people of Israel, because I think you will see Israelis sadly killed in the coming hours. But what is important about the leadership of Israel is they have a clarity of understanding, even though they know that this action will endanger some lives in Israel. It is far, far less dangerous than a nuclear Iran that could detonate a nuclear weapon and murder millions of Israelis. You know, the former head of Iran's nuclear research, who went to meet his maker, and many say at the hands of the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence services, he had written into his last will and testament that he wanted written onto his tombstone, here lies a man who seeks the annihilation of Israel. That's the level of bilious hatred on behalf of the Ayatollahs and the mullahs and Iran, and Israel understands that with a very clear-eyed reality. I believe President Trump does too, and so we're going to stand up and defend ourselves against these very real threats.
Well, that, of course, is Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Senator Cruz, appreciate, as always, your insight and your moral clarity.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate you, particularly tonight.
Well, folks, we've been covering this. We'll continue to cover this tomorrow on the show. It appears that Israel's attacks are ongoing. It is full day in Iran right now. The time in Tehran is now 6:29 a.m. It is approximately an hour earlier in the state of Israel. Israel is apparently expecting some sort of response, presumably in the next couple of hours. We will see whether that response amounts to hundreds of missiles, what that looks like. The bottom line is that Israel's operation thus far has been extraordinarily successful by all available metrics. Israeli sources are telling Amit Segal that the attack on Iran was preceded by a deception operation that included media and political components domestically and internationally with participation of a wide variety of parties. So far, what we know is that Israel has taken out perhaps the entire top layer of the IRGC. They have taken out top nuclear scientists, and there is smoke rising over the nuclear facilities in Natanz. And this is the beginning. So we'll continue to watch this as all of it unfolds. For now, good night. We'll see you tomorrow morning here on The Ben Shapiro Show.